This is the Rural Homelessness Podcast, where we discuss the important issues around rural homelessness, hear from those affected by it, and offer some solutions. Brought to you by the award-winning homelessness charity, the Ferry Project. Welcome to the Rural Homelessness Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Rural Homelessness Podcast. I'm your host, Matt McChlery. Now, you've already done a really important thing today. You've clicked over here and you are listening to this show. It's not just your run-of-the-mill average podcast. This podcast addresses real issues around real topics and makes a real difference in the lives of those people who are experiencing rural homelessness. So thank you so much for clicking over here today. Now, on today's show, I'm going to be joined by Keith Smith, who is the founder and the CEO of the Ferry Project, a homelessness charity based in Wisbech in the east of England. And I'm also joined by Andy Brown, who is the Group Chief Sustainability Officer from Anglian Water. And together, we're going to be tackling the topic of how working together transforms communities and helps to address rural homelessness. So it's quite a wide-ranging discussion today. We do focus on rural homelessness for part of it, but most of it is really broad brushstrokes on how businesses and community groups and ordinary people can all work together to achieve great things. So do have a listen and be inspired by the episode today. So, without further ado, let's welcome Keith Smith and Andy Brown to the show. So, let's welcome our guests to today's episode. Hello, Keith Smith. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Matt.
And Andy Brown. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Matt. Very nice to be here.
Thank you so much for joining me today. Now, for the benefit of our audience, I'm just going to quickly explain a little bit about business in the community, or often referred to as BITC, because I believe you two have kind of done quite a lot of working and partnership together through business and communities. So let's just understand a little bit about what that is, first of all. So I'm just on the Business in Communities website, bitc.org. .uk. And this is how they define themselves. They say business in the community is the UK's largest and most influential responsible business network dedicated to building a fairer and greener world together, supported by His Majesty the King for over 40 years. We inspire, engage, and challenge purposeful leaders to take practical action to mobilize their collective strength as a force for good in society. So, Business and Communities, BITC. Andy, how has Anglian Water become part of this network?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. So, Anglian have been involved with BITC for a long time, for decades now. And the whole purpose of the network, the reason that the Prince, as he was at the time, set the network up was kind of in response to the riots back in the 1980s, and I guess a bit of a breakdown in civil society. And he thought that businesses could play a critical role in kind of getting much more involved and being much more present in the community, and bring their skills and their kind of knowledge to try and, make a better future. So, I mean, that really fits in with the way that Anglian operates. So we've been involved with BITC on a number of different things. So at a national level, we've worked on, they had a piece of work looking at well-being within the workforce, and that's something that's really dear to our hearts. So we've worked on projects around that. We've worked on environmental projects. We used to run a water task force for them across the country. And then for the last, just over 10 years, we've been involved in their PLACE program. And that really came out of a project that they had running, which was called Business Connectors, which was asking businesses to basically second a fairly senior person through BITC into a local community to go and understand what the challenges and opportunities were in the sector, in a particular location, not going in with an agenda, but going there to listen. And then, just as the title suggested, a business connector to try and work out how they could connect opportunities or challenges with businesses who could provide some support. And that kind of got our attention, and we got involved in Wisbech just over 10 years ago. But we've stuck around, and we said, actually, this is something that you can't do kind of something meaningful in just a short space of time. So we've been working with BITC ever since. They now have a national task force on place-based regeneration, which we're part of. I sit on that task force, and we've shared a lot of the experiences that we've had in Wisbech through the BITC network, and they have now got an aspiration to have 50 place projects running in every country in the UK by 2032.
So was Wisbech one of the sort of pilot project areas then, which the rest have kind of sprung out from?
Yeah, I said a pioneer, I think, is a nicer word. So absolutely, yes, the work that we all did together in Wisbech, because Anglian can't take credit for it. We always talk about it as being a coalition of the willing, and the only way you can really create meaningful change is bringing the business sector together with the political sector, political leaders, and the civic sector. When you get those three sectors together, you start to create genuine opportunity for change. So yes, we've always been really keen on feeding back on the learnings that we've had in Wisbech, and trying to shine a spotlight on Wisbech and get Wisbech nationally recognised on the map and bring people in to see some of the challenges, but also see the opportunities there. But equally, kind of share that learning with other organisations, other businesses, but also with BITC to try and stimulate something similar in other locations. And they've got about another 12 location place projects running around the country.
Great. Keith, how has Ferry Project become part of BITC?
Okay, so Ferry is in a more of a receiving organisation than organisations like Anglian Water, which are more in the position of giving, and the other partners. So Ferry Project is a homeless charity based in Wisbech, and as part of our work, we help homeless people, and we don't just help them to get housed and so on, but we also try and prevent homelessness. And one of the ways we try to prevent homelessness is now through a community centre. So let's go back. So Andy mentioned that they've been involved with BITC in Wisbech for about 10 years, and when they first came out, the connector, by the way, was called Russell Beale. And Russell came out and started to talk with various organisations in Wisbech and the local authority and so on. And Ferry Project was one of the organisations he spoke to. And he came along and basically said, is there anything we could do to help? So we started having conversations about that. And I started to share some of the challenges that Ferry Project was facing. When we've already discussed in earlier podcasts about the challenges around rural homelessness and some of the deprivation problems that there are in Wisbech. And one of the projects that we actually shared with Russell that we were trying to get off the ground was, at that time, there was a disused community centre called the Queen Mary Centre that was potentially in line for demolition. And Ferry Project have been approached by local community groups, because we're of a reasonable size and we're used to using property, to see if we would lease it to try and save it for the community. And we're having all sorts of difficulties. One, the centre was in quite poor condition and needed a bit of a refurb. And two, trying to get the contract across the line of that lease was really quite challenging. And we shared that information, and Anglian Water then did some work with us and put us in contact with people. So one, they helped us to get the lease over the line. They actually helped with the negotiations and helped to organise that so that the Queen Mary Centre could actually be leased by us. And two, once we got that lease, they got together with partners, and we had a massive day where, 400 volunteers must have come along and helped to redecorate and paint fences and do gardening and do all sorts of things. And indeed, these partners came along and helped to refurb the toilets in the facility and change the whole of the entrance hall. And as a result of that, the Queen Mary Centre was able to open. And just to give you a quick idea of the impact of that, so that was 10 years ago. And at the time when it opened, the Queen Mary Centre was probably, well, it hadn't been operating for a while, but even prior to it not operating, it had been opened by the local authority and it was getting about, 15,000 visits a year. So last year when we took a recording of how many visits were now happening as a community centre, and it was nearly 70,000. And the population of Wisbech is only 30,000. So effectively, it's like every person in Wisbech visiting 2.5 times the centre. And the impact it's had is just remarkable. So, it's impacted in so many different parts of life, way beyond homelessness. We've had counselling sessions, we've had youth sessions. There's all sorts of arts projects, choirs, a church comes out of there, there's donations hub, there's employment work going on, there's CABs based there. And so all this massive of stuff, this health projects going on. So the people of Wisbech have been helped in innumerable ways because the centre now is operating. And it's operating because of our work with BITC. And that was the first project, but it was a stimulating project. And that's had a big effect. And we've done many projects since, especially around employment and work opportunities and so on. So there's been some wonderful work going on.
Being the Rural Homelessness Podcast, and you're a homelessness charity taking on a community centre, just explain to us, how does that fit together with your kind of mandate of sort of helping the homeless? How does that sort of cross over into now also running and managing a community centre? How does it fit together?
Okay, right. Well, you're not the only person who's ever asked that question. So it's been asked quite a lot. So if you think about it, somebody doesn't become homeless because of an event. Actually, homelessness is something that happens over a period of time. It's very seldom that one event triggers somebody becoming homeless, although it might be the final event. It might be the final event in a whole series of events that person says, oh, that's why I'm homeless. Whereas actually, over time, decisions will have been made, things will have happened, traumas will have been suffered that have led that person down a route where they end up homeless. Now, at the moment, there are over 30 community groups delivering services out of the Queen Mary Centre. And each of those groups do different things. So some of them are arts related, as I say, some are health related, some are counselling, some are support, and people get all sorts of different things out of the Queen Mary Centre. But all the time, the local community is supporting the local community. So the people of Wisbech are supporting the people of Wisbech. And what we believe, because we can't prove it, is that if a person interacts with somebody else and that interaction is positive, it can change the direction of a person's life, even if it's only very slightly. But if you have 10 interactions, each that are positive, they might make a bigger change. And so the individual's life takes a slightly different course. So if we can get a centre that positively interacts with people, what we hope is that their interactions will mean that less people become homeless. And we believe that hundreds of people have been stopped from becoming homeless because of the work that's taken place in the Queen Mary Centre. And indeed, for Ferry Project is really good because our job is to try and help homeless people. But if they've never become homeless, that's a much better place to be. It's a much better place. So actually investing in this community centre, investing in the work that it does, encouraging groups within Wisbech, we believe is the long-term solution to homelessness, because hopefully it would never happen. That's the aim and that's the goal. So that's why we run the centre. We can never prove something that didn't happen, but we believe fervently that lots of people have been saved from homelessness because of the work that's gone on there.
Thank you. Andy, coming back to you, Anglian Water, the regional water company, and from someone from the outside, because on the surface of it, pipes and this liquid stuff called water, that's what you do. But it appears from your involvement in BITC and all these other projects that I've been hearing about prior to the podcast, that there's much more to Anglian Water than just water. What is it about the ethos of the company that wants to engage and sort of make life better for the communities that it serves and operates in?
No, and that's a great question. And when in our involvement with Wisbech, we were often asked at the beginning, so why are you getting involved? What's in it for Anglian Water? The really simple kind of answer is yes, we're a water company, and we're there to kind of ensure that we provide drinking water to our customers and that we take their used water back and we treat it well and we put it back into the environment, and create that kind of almost a circular economy. But in doing that, we have to remember we employ, thousands of people directly within the company and tens of thousands if you start to look through our supply chain as well. And we interact with every individual in the region. So, I think approximately now there's about 7 million people who are our customers. And we're also facing kind of huge pressures and changes. So whether we think about the rapidly changing climate and the impact that has on people, or whether we think about the cost of living crisis and, coming out of a pandemic, that has huge social pressures. So we as an organisation have a role to play in all of that. And back in 2019, the company actually decided that we really ought to ratify that role that we have beyond what is considered a traditional business. So we changed our articles of association. So that's the kind of, the DNA of the company. And in there, we put a new purpose, which is about delivering environmental and social prosperity to the region we serve. So what we do as a company is now not just about supplying water, it's about supplying it in a way that enables environmental and social prosperity. And kind of coming in to Wisbech with BITC was, I guess, was a manifestation of that. And we genuinely came in with no business objectives, no kind of corporate social responsibility boxes to tick. It came out of a visit that our CEO, Peter, had in the East End of London. He went on a business in the community, seeing is believing visit, to go and have a look at some of the challenges people were facing there and some of the solutions that were being created. And he came back from that inspired and said, well, there have got to be places in the region that are in need of our support, and we need to work out how we can, make a lasting difference to them. So we got together with our supply chain, our kind of top tier of our contractors, and we said, right, let's find a location and let's go in and listen. And that's how we got involved in Wisbech, and it genuinely was about going in and trying to understand what the issues were, not riding in and saying, right, we've got the answers, this is what you need to do. If you just listen to us, we will tell you how to make things better. It was about going in and trying to understand, and then trying to pick a number of things that we knew we had got skill sets in or got resources to support. And not, as Keith said, we came in with volunteers and we helped with the Queen Mary Centre. But what wouldn't have been good is if we took some pictures of that and we walked away again, because that's not really delivering anything. So when we talk to other organisations about it, we say this is a long-term commitment. If you genuinely want to make a difference in a location, you've got to show up. You've got to show up regularly, and you've got to show up in the long term. What's really interesting is that although we went in with no business objectives, what's come out of it is a whole set of kind of benefits to us as a business, whether that's, individuals, employees feeling a connection with the location, feeling better about the work that they do, the kind of connection we've had with organisations, including Keith's, and with the school and the college in town, has unlocked access to talent, and we're having to compete with lots and lots of other organisations to get kind of talent into our workforce. And then looking at it kind of more broadly, we've really had the opportunity to explore, okay, what will make Wisbech successful in the long term? And what does that mean in the kind of context of the landscape? And what role does water play kind of in that landscape? And is water preventing the sustainable growth and, positive future of Wisbech, or can it be used to enable that? So it's amazing what has come out of that exploration.
And what are some of the events or projects that have happened over the last few years? I believe the then Prince Charles came along as a result of some of the initiatives going on. Can you just tell us a bit more about that?
I guess you can split it into three chunks. So one is the kind of long-term transformational stuff, thinking about how the infrastructure works together, how connected or unconnected actually Wisbech is. So we've been looking at that, thinking about how do you, what would it look like if we reconnected Wisbech to the mainline railway, and how would that support the kind of regeneration of the town? We've also been looking at the connection and the interaction between the kind of the town businesses and the education sector. So what can we do to support kind of better attainment and aspiration kind of in the education sector, and how do we link that up with opportunities and the skills gap that we see in our industry coming down the road? And I guess the kind of more immediate stuff was around, what can we as an organization and our supply chain do to support some of the really urgent issues, the things that are kind of causing an issue within the town now. So, that's where we've had, I guess, the direct connection and interaction with Keith and the Ferry Project. And some of that is, and it's not about coming in and saying, okay, we're a company and BITC are an organization who work with communities. We know what the answer is. So if you just all move aside, please, we'll do some painting and everything will be fine. It was really trying to understand and spend a lot of time working with people like Keith and others in the town to say, okay, tell us about what you experience on a day-to-day basis. What are you trying to do that you're finding difficult? What skills and experience can we as a company and our supply chain as a group of companies support you with? So I guess that's so kind of community cohesion in the short term. There's education and aspiration and trying to develop opportunities in the medium term. And then there's the long-term stuff, which is about more infrastructure transformational long-term change.
And part of that involved a visit from the then Prince Charles, now King Charles. How did that all come about, and sort of what happened there?
So, the King, or the Prince as he was then, is the founding patron of business in the community. And so he was always interested in the work that the BITC were doing. And I think the idea of place-based regeneration and the work that we were starting to do in Wisbech resonated with him on a number of counts, because one, he's been involved in place-based regeneration in a couple of places, kind of down in kind of Dorset area, but also up in Scotland, at Dumfries House, which, he bought and then has used that as a kind of, I don't know, grit in the oyster. Is that the right kind of term to try and say, right, okay, how can investment in that one building and one estate create benefit for the broader community? And so I think he was quite interested in, what experiences has he seen in developing support for the community in those locations with what we're doing in Wisbech. And obviously we knew one of the things that we've always talked about with Keith and with others in Wisbech was that, it's sometimes quite hard to get people to notice a town like Wisbech, which might be struggling to find its direction and to gain inward investment. And one of the things that we thought we could do as a company was try and keep, ringing the bell, shining the torch on it. And an aspiration was, well, if you can get the prince, as he was at the time, to come, well, that creates a focus. And he agreed to come down on part of his visit to the broader area, visit to the east of England. And Keith got to spend some time with him. Sadly, I wasn't there on the day. Our CEO was there, but I was lucky enough. I was lucky enough to go up to Scotland actually and meet him at Dumfries House and talk to him about what we were doing there and have a look at what he's been doing.
I was there on the day. I was stood along the road on this sort of walk into, I think it's the church where all the sort of expo was happening, and he was meeting with people. And I stood there for about an hour waiting for him to arrive, and he kind of got out of his car, walked past, and I had a 3-second glimpse. But, I was there. But Keith, you actually got to meet the Prince and now King, King Charles, when he came to Wisbech. Were you able to talk to the King about the homelessness issues that are faced in rural communities, or what? How did that go?
Okay, so so both the King and Queen Camilla came, as you say, as Prince, and I don't know what title she had before, but in her role. So they stopped. So they came round and saw each group that was in the church and talked with each group. And so they came and spoke with us. They met with one of our staff team, and they also met with myself. And we were able to share a little bit about the function that we were doing, but we had about 3 minutes with the King. So he was interested. He asked some sensible questions about the work we were doing. But we weren't able to start having a discussion about rural homelessness in any sort of depth, just about the size of the problem in Finland and what we were currently doing. We had a longer chat, actually, in a previous meeting when we first met the Prince, because we also had a meeting in London where BITC was showcasing some of the work they'd done. And indeed, he came and saw a stand where Anglian Water was showing some of the work they were doing with BITC. And indeed, he had a very long conversation, in many minutes, with one of my compatriots, John Heathorn, who'd been an ex-client. And he was talking to John about John's life and the fact that he'd become homeless, and how the Ferry Project had supported him and then, in fact, employed him. And that had quite a profound effect on John. That actually motivated John to continue his journey. So John at that time had started to work for Ferry Project, but now John is actually a senior manager within the organisation, and he still looks back at the time he met the Prince as being quite a time of great inspiration, and a time that he draws strength from to continue the work that he's now doing. So John now supports and helps many hundreds of homeless people a year, and really is able to interact with them. And a lot of the drive for that came from his meeting with the Prince. So the Prince, those types of visits do have an impact.
And if any of our listeners want to hear John's story in detail, John spoke to me on an earlier episode of the podcast. So just search for John's journey from homelessness to hope, and you'll be able to hear all of John's story over on that episode. Andy, you mentioned that you have also worked with other local community groups in Wisbech. Yes, you work with Ferry Project, but they're not the only ones. So what else can you tell us about these other community groups and the other involvement you're having in the town with and through them?
Yeah, so as I explained, we kind of worked in these kind of 3 buckets, if you like. And I think one of the areas of real interest was around the kind of educational sector. And we know that if you're going to kind of make an impact in a child's life through their educational program, there's lots of research out there which says you've got to kind of interact them kind of 4 or 5 times over their school life to kind of make an impression and potentially kind of change their views and increase their kind of aspirations and give them some inspiration. So we've worked with the primary school in Wisbech. We also work with the Thomas Clarkson Academy, and then we've got a long-term relationship with the College of West Anglia as well. So, I mean, that's been everything from, going in and supporting students with CV writing, mock interview techniques, and actually sometimes just going in and talking about the outside world. If you've grown up in Wisbech, and actually because it's a relatively isolated location, you don't have a lot of experience of seeing other locations, seeing what is out there. I mean, we think we're in an incredibly connected world through the internet and social media and everything now, but actually that's not real life. So you only get a certain level of kind of
it's one
connection.
window, isn't it? And that window usually has a particular lens on it, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And so I remember chatting to somebody who was really interested in history. Her grades were really good. I did kind of mock interview with her, and at the end of it, I kind of stopped and said, "Oh, it was really great. One thing though, you say you want to go to university and study history, and that's brilliant. But when I asked her what she wanted to do, she said, "I want to be a history teacher." And I said, "Well, that's a really laudable kind of aspiration. Why do you want to do that?" And that was, the only role model that she'd seen was the history teacher in the school. And I said, my mother was a teacher. I don't want to put you off being a teacher, but do it if it's genuinely a vocation. If you really want to teach and that's going to be your passion, brilliant. Go and do that. That would be amazing. But if not, have you thought about, what English Heritage do? Have you thought about the National Trust at Peckover House in Wisbech? Have you thought about, almost every large company, big kind of national, international company, has an archivist, has a historian attached to them, and I just said there's so many other things you can do with a history degree that's either kind of very directly history focused or can go on to be something else, because by doing a history degree you learn a lot about research and being able to explain that piece of research that you've done. And I said, there are all sorts of political advisors that will have come from a history degree background. So that was a really interesting one. But then, going in and doing careers fairs and bringing lots of other companies in to show the breadth of different kind of job opportunities that are out there. I think that's been really important.
Can I chip in, Andy?
Yeah,
just one I remember. So, Matt, the one that sticks in my mind was a story that was relayed to me. So a guy called Russell Beale was helping out. Russell was doing a lot, but they were working with a primary school, and they went into the primary school, and they were trying to get the children to dream and imagine the world of the future. And so they asked the question: if we were to build a new swimming pool in Wisbech, what would you like in it? Okay. And so they described in a level of detail the existing swimming pool that was already in Wisbech, and basically said they'd like it done up a bit. Okay. And so Russell started to say, well, what about slides? And they go, well, what are slides? And he said, well, these are slides. And he tried to describe it, and they were looking at him a bit baffled, what's this new modern fad that he's talking about, type of thing. And so they were very confused. So Russell then said, well, where's your nearest slide? Oh, I know there's a slide in Hunstanton. How many have visited the swimming pool in Hunstanton? And which is at the nearest seaside resort, really, to Wisbech. And less than half the class had ever been to Hunstanton. So he organised, and Anglian Water organised, a trip out to Hunstanton, and they went to the swimming pool, but they also went to the beach. And as I say, less than half the children in the class had ever been to the seaside. None of them have ever been in that particular swimming pool. And that then inspired them. So when they came back after the trip, and Russell said, so what do you want in your swimming pool now? And they started talking all about slides and all these things that they could do and being able to have, I don't know, different things. But instantly their vision, their focus just grew. It was just a massive expansion of what the possibilities were. And one, that was great for those kids. Two, that story has been shared on a number of occasions, and I don't know if it had any impact, but after a while, Wisbech Town Council introduced something called Wisbech Day, where they actually put sand and donkeys and buckets and spades in Wisbech Park, because they now know that primary school-aged children do not get to the seaside, even though it's not that far away. And so they give them an experience of the beach in Wisbech itself. But for me personally, what it helped me to do was to understand aspiration. And it helped me to understand why, to some extent, the aspiration in Wisbech has been, we keep being told, people have very low aspirations. And it helped me to understand that you can only aspire to what you believe and what you know.
What you know.
Yeah. If you don't realise that there's something beyond, that you have an opportunity elsewhere, you can't aspire to it. It's really what Andy was saying about that student. The fact that they didn't know the other careers, they couldn't imagine going and doing those careers because they just didn't know that they were there. And one of the things that Anglian Water have been able to do, and BITC have done, is to start to provide the young people of Wisbech with a vision of what is possible, what is available, the opportunities that there are that are not currently available to them or weren't available, that here are possibilities that you can aspire to. And I think that's been incredibly powerful. And personally, I think we're starting to see an increase in the aspiration of people of Wisbech. They do want more, and that drives them to do more. And so I think you can have quite a profound effect on the population just by helping them to lift their eyes up and see that the world is actually a much bigger and exciting place than possibly they thought before.
And just the other thing that really sticks in my mind is with business in the community, we were awarded their kind of top honour of being Responsible Business of the Year back in 2017. Along with that honour comes the request to host the next big event in 2018. So we were very happy to do that. And these are quite big plush events held in the Royal Albert Hall in London, and usually require kind of celebrity guests to kind of attract the 1,000-odd business people to come and take part in the night and learn a bit more about kind of being a responsible business and take part in the award ceremony. But we worked really closely with BITC and said, well, can we do this in a different way? And what we wanted to do was really showcase Wisbech and say to all the businesses there, actually, if you could go away tonight and go and find a place like Wisbech where you've got some skin in the game, you could go and see what you can do to transform that community. And although we had one kind of celebrity to kind of host that night, which was Sir Lenny Henry, what we said, and we agreed with BITC, was that we'd run a competition in Wisbech and say, right, can we find some young, aspiring co-hosts who would like to run the award ceremony alongside Sir Lenny Henry? And we just asked people to record a 2-minute video and send it in, tell us about them and their life in Wisbech and why they'd like to get on stage. And we had a fantastic set of entries, and we recruited, originally it was going to be three people and a backup. And we took them down to London beforehand, and we gave them some media training. Not that they really needed it, actually. We took them to Highgrove House, and they got to meet the Prince of Wales at the time. And then, I can't remember the date, in July in 2018, they all stood up. Oh, that's right. We paid for them to buy themselves an outfit, and we said, buy something that will be suitable to stand on the stage, but also think about the fact that you might be going to interviews and things later. So, perhaps don't go for the most crazy, outlandish thing. Think about buying something which could have a dual function. Anyway, I stood on the side of the stage that night. Keith was there and took part in it as well. And they got up next to Lenny Henry in front of 1,000 or so senior leaders from around the country and absolutely blew the crowd away. And, certainly had me in tears. One of the most emotional nights. I was acting as their chaperone. And I still keep in touch with some of them. So that was, 6 years ago. And some of them went away saying, right, okay, I didn't know I could do this. I had anxiety. If you'd have told me I could stand on the stage and talk to people like this. And I think there was one moment where we did them as changeovers in the night. So they weren't all on stage at the same time. And one of them still had their mic on as they came off the stage and said something slightly inappropriate in a celebratory fashion as they handed over to the next one coming on. But the whole crowd erupted with that. And so, so it is, if I heard a really brilliant phrase, not from kind of within Anglian Water, actually from another company that work on purpose. And they said purpose isn't always about making different decisions. It's about making decisions differently. So the format of that night was the same kind of format, but we just did it in a slightly different way to try and generate more value out of it. So that's something that sticks in my mind.
That's great. And this whole episode, we're focusing on how working together can transform communities, and sort of as a knock-on effect from that, can also help to address rural homelessness. So Keith, from your perspective, why is it important for business leaders to work together, not just for the good of their company, but for the good of their community in general?
Okay, well, let's approach that from two sides. So let's approach it, first of all, from the company side. So the reality is for every company that they are based in their community, and those companies have the need to meet their customers and to serve their customers effectively. Okay, so they want to build relationships with their customers. So in working in a community on the challenges of that community, they demonstrate to the local community that they're a genuine company who wants to make a difference. They want to have good employees. They want their employees to feel happy in the work that they're doing, and they want to make an impact on the community and actually lift the community up. So it's really good PR for the company and so on. But for the local population itself, okay, if you're in a community like Wisbech, which is a comparatively poor community, the level of investment in that community is very low. So Wisbech still hasn't received never received any levelling up funding. We haven't had the level of investment that, say, Cambridge has and so on. So the community then is impoverished in many different ways. Now, companies like Anglian Water, other businesses and so on, they have staff with skills and knowledge. They have resources themselves. And by working together with local charities and people that understand the needs of the society, they can actually bring some of their assets, whether that's to lend key individual staff to help the community group, whether that is to help draw down resources. So let me give you a good example. Russell, who, as I say, is an employee of Anglian Water who's helped us. Ferry Project applied for some funding to start doing some employment work from the Joint Authority. Okay. At that time, we worked with Russell, and Russell came along and helped to coach us to actually go into an interview process with him to secure some funding for that. Russell helped and talked to us and supported us in that, and we secured that funding. So we were able to draw down some, I think it was at the time, nearly £100,000, which had a major impact. It helped hundreds of people in Wisbech to find work, and that came as a direct result of the support that Russell was able to give us to do a good presentation to the Joint Authority, and the Joint Authority saw that we were an organisation which could meet the need, and so presented us with money, and so that helped hundreds of people. What the company gave was time for Russell. They didn't have to give any money themselves, but it had a major impact. It secured £100,000 into Wisbech, and as I say, impacted literally hundreds of people's jobs. And in fact, Ferry Project got additional work on the basis of that, worth over £500,000, where we went on for another 6 years supplying employment support to a whole range of people in Wisbech, where we supported well over 1,000 people to both look for and find employment in the area. So companies can have profound effects without having to invest vast amounts of money themselves, but using the skill and the talent of the staff, they can share that skill and talent with other organisations. And the truth is, when business, when public sector, and when the voluntary sector all work together, genuinely something magic happens. That synergy, the exchange of ideas, the exchange of experience and knowledge can produce some amazing outputs, some genuinely changing. So Anglian Water again helped us to get the lease on the Queen Mary Centre signed. The Queen Mary Centre is a community centre. When we took it over, it was disused. It was only having a very few visitors. So last year, the Queen Mary Centre had in excess of 60,000 visits from a community of 30,000 people. And the impact of the Queen Mary Centre is huge. And Anglian Water just had a few conversations at the right time, because we'd been sharing them with them some of our problems. They went and had conversations at quite a high level with some senior council people who didn't realise there was a blockage in getting the lease through. That released the lease. That allowed us to get the project going. Anglian Water then gave us some staff time to help us upgrade it. And a community centre that was being gradually wasting away and not being used now is one of the most popular community centres in the whole of Cambridgeshire, having a significant impact in a very deprived community. And to be frank, I don't know all the impacts, the impacts of all the different meetings and all the different things that have taken place in that centre over the last 12 years. But that was all done because business and voluntary sector got together, spoke with the local authority, Cambs County Council, and suddenly a centre that was being shut down was opened up and became a vibrant, active community centre. So there's all those types of ideas. And there's another organisation called People and Animals, which Anglian Water got involved with and helped to create what's now called the Wisbech Farm. And that's going great guns and helps people with mental health problems and learning difficulties. And that's been a large part of that has been the encouragement and support they've given to the leaders of that project. And that's now having, again, a profound effect in Wisbech. So there's all these types of spin-offs when you can get people who are passionate, business that has business understanding, and the public sector where they can channel resources and stuff, and things can get unlocked and change can happen. So they're just some examples of why it's so important for business, the voluntary sector, and the public sector to work together.
And just to kind of jump in and add some thoughts on that, one of the things is we try to share our experience in our engagement in Wisbech, for the last 11 plus years. And I talked to lots of businesses and through BITC and other networks about, what's worked and why it's worked, and encourage other businesses to get involved in locations that are important to them. And one of the first things I always get asked is, okay, so what was the business benefit? So what metrics did you put in place? How were you tracking what impact you were having? And I have to say at that point, said, if you want to do it well, you can't do that. You cannot go in with something in mind and be so blinkered to kind of say, right, we're going to do this particular thing and it's going to drive these outcomes and we're going to be able to record those. If we'd have done that, if we'd have gone, right, okay, we're going to focus on this thing, we've got these metrics to track so that we can demonstrate that we've done a good thing, you probably then would have ignored all the other opportunities and actually, quite frankly, the things that really need your help and support. So that's the advice I give to other people: is don't go in with an agenda. Don't go in saying, well, this will be what the business benefit is and this is how we're going to record it. Yes, you can do that in time. Sometimes I don't think it's always necessary, to be perfectly honest. I'll probably get shot down by other businesses for saying that. But, as Keith said, we're not sitting here looking to record what the total social value we might have unlocked so that we can put it in our annual report. That's not what this is about. What this was about for us was really an exploration in, okay, how does a corporate work in a way in the 21st century that is a model of good citizenship? And I look back and think, my father years and years and years ago worked for Unilever, and I remember going up to Port Sunlight. I've been to Bourneville and seen how Bourneville was created and the kind of Victorian approach. And it's a bit, when I talked to our old CEO about it, it was a bit like that. It's about saying, well, sometimes you just know that something's the right thing to be doing. And I don't think I've come across anyone who is involved in our company, whether they are an investor or one of the directors or one of our supply chain alliances or anyone else who works in it, who've come to Wisbech and talked to people and got involved, that's gone away and gone, oh, well, that's not really had an impact, or that's not been worthwhile. So, that's what matters to us, I think. And every time I talk to Keith, I hear another story about how, some knock-on benefit from something we might have done years and years ago has now kind of come to fruition.
So we've heard lots of sort of benefits sort of for the community in a whole variety of number of ways that can be achieved through businesses working together to help transform their communities. But because this is the Rural Homelessness Podcast, do we have any stories of how this working together approach has made an impact on those who are experiencing homelessness or rural homelessness, taking Wisbech or Fenland as an example?
Yes, so let's build on it then. So this type of project, what it does is, if we're looking at, let's go back to the Queen Mary Centre. So the Queen Mary Centre now contains a donation hub. Now that donations hub is a place where people give goods, right? And many of our homeless clients go when they get their first house, will have no furniture. They'll have no pots and pans. They'll have nothing for it. The donations hub, now they can go to that donations hub and they can get furniture, pots and pans, towels, bedding, beds, pillows, lamps, and so on. And that then helps them to set up their home. Okay, so it makes a significant difference to them. It allows them to get a fresh start and get going. Okay, that did not exist before the Queen Mary Centre was made available. It's something that's been developed over the years with the Queen Mary Centre, and indeed was developed out of the help that BITC gave us as part of COVID. It came from donations that were given to the Ferry Project as part of COVID and has led on to this donations hub. And that now we've had well over 100 clients who have benefited directly from donations from there. If we look at during COVID and post-COVID, BITC helped Ferry Project develop links with local food businesses. And during COVID, we gave out over 60,000 meals to people in need during the COVID period. And since then, we've continued. And over the last 3 years, we've given away on average 400 meals a week to homeless people in the community who need food because they're in food poverty. So what's that? 400,000 a week over 50 weeks. We're talking, 20 odd thousand a year. So again, another 60,000 meals. So all these connections, so local business supplying the charity with goods that we're able to share with homeless people. Opportunities with work. So one of our clients actually got a job through Anglian Water's apprenticeship scheme that they set up as a result of this work. So there's a direct result there. We've got all sorts of spin-offs that are working all the time, absolutely, to help homeless people. And indeed, Anglian Water got us in contact with Kier Construction. Kier Construction wanted to help Ferry Project, so we needed to redesign a part of our building to create a hub where homeless people off the street, could come and ask for support and have a place for support. Kier totally refitted the whole of that space. So we now have a hub which any person with housing issues in the population can turn up to at any time, right the way through into the evening, and there'll be a member of staff there who will talk to them about their housing problems. And last year, over 100 people were kept from becoming homeless by that. So we can start to link clearly that this type of business work does have all sorts of outcomes, many of which at the start of the journey you have no idea would be available to you.
And I mean, certainly from our perspective, what the relationship we have with Keith, and it's one of the we can't do this absolutely everywhere across the region. Anglian Water cover from the Humber down to the Thames and 14 counties in between. What part of the work we've been doing in Wisbech was about saying, okay, if you spread yourself so thin across a region like that, you're not going to make any difference, any impact. Does it make a difference to work intensively in a location and try and create some transformational change? And what started out with this work in Wisbech is now being replicated with our involvement in Norwich, in Lowestoft, in Colchester, about to be in Grimsby. And the relationship with Keith is a really open and honest one in saying, Keith can phone me whenever he wants to and say, Andy, this is an issue. I'm not expecting you to say yes, but, and sometimes, it's no, there's nothing I can do about that. I'm really sorry. But other times it is, I mean, Keith, as you were talking about the food distribution and COVID, just as that was, becoming a really critical requirement, your van went kaput, didn't it? So, Keith said, Andy, our van's gone kaput. I don't suppose there's any chance. And you know what? There was just one of those opportune moments where we were renegotiating with our vehicle suppliers, and I can't remember how many vans we were buying. I don't know whether it was buy 300, get one free, but anyway, they offered us an additional van. And chatting to our transport manager, he said, well, yeah, we don't actually need it. We can donate it to the Ferry Project. So that's what we did. Now if Keith had phoned a week before, that might not have been happening, but yeah, so it's building that kind of long-term relationship, I think, is really important.
And if you don't mind me saying, Matt, but it's a starfish story, isn't it? Okay. Your starfish, somebody comes along, loads of starfish on the beach, and they walk along and they pick the starfish up and start throwing it in, and others say, well, why are you doing that? What difference does it make? And the guy says, well, it makes a difference to that one as he throws it in. It makes a difference to that one. And okay, you could say, what difference has it made? Well, it's made a difference to hundreds and hundreds of people in Wisbech and hundreds of homeless people. And, all those lives have been changed as a direct result of the relationship we've had with Anglian Water, and changed for the better. We can see it's for the better. They tell us it's for the better. John is a living case study of how it is better, and we can do that, and we can pick up with loads of people, apprentices in Wisbech, people in schools, as I say, people and animals, people with disabilities and learning challenges, and we can see that things are better. Wisbech is a better place because of the input that Anglian Water have put into it, and what BITC have done has made a distinct and clear and positive difference in people's lives. And that's just, it's just a wonderful privilege to be involved in. But it's just exactly what Andy was saying. It's the right thing to do. It's just got to be the right thing to do.
And that goes both ways. So everyone who, as I said, who's been involved in this process from our side goes away being better. Goes away with community and, understanding their own privilege and bringing that then into the way they make decisions at work. And, and that's really, really important. And the other thing is also just not, this has never, ever been about holding us up as an example. If you went to the Ferry Project, you wouldn't see any mention of Anglian Water. There's no logos. We're not doing this for greenwashing, purpose washing, whatever people might want to accuse us of. We're not looking for press column images on that. What's really important, though, is that other businesses, and we, and again, huge thanks to Keith and the team, because we have probably brought, I don't know, 50, 60 businesses to Wisbech over the last 10 years to talk through what we're doing. The last one being back in July. As a result of that, big national business has gone away and said, yeah, right, okay, we're adopting another town. We're going to replicate this and do it somewhere else. So to your Starfish example, if we can get another 10 businesses picking up a Starfish, brilliant. If they then can roll on and encourage another 10 to pick up a Starfish, there are businesses in every community in the country. And one of the things that we, the ultimate utopian aim would be, God, wouldn't it be brilliant if every business was really connected into their community and every business was trying to help reconnect and giving as much back as they're taking out from that community, because there's huge intangible benefits to be had from that for the business as well.
That really leads me on nicely to my final question of the discussion today, is if there is someone listening who is involved in a business, wherever they may be located in the country, and they've heard what you've been talking about, and they're starting to think, actually, this might be something we could do. What would your sort of final words of advice be to someone kind of teetering on the edge? Should I, shouldn't I? Is this for us? I'm not too sure, but maybe. What would you say to those people?
I'd say come and have a chat. So, either find me on LinkedIn and drop me a line and mention the podcast, and then share the podcast so that more people can listen.
Oh yeah, share
it
the
as
podcast.
Well.
Yeah, share.
We actually produced a booklet, which was a kind of guide to collaboration for kind of place-based regeneration. And that's still on our website. So you can find that, and Keith is featured in that, but it gives you the kind of top tips. It kind of talks you through the early stages of doing it. And Business in the Community, I've got a lot of resources on their website as well. So the other thing is to talk to the BITC Place team, because BITC have now got a target of creating 50 place-based regeneration projects across all the nations by 2032, I think it is now. So they're actively looking. What I would say, though, and this is what I say to all the businesses who ever come to talk to me about this kind of work, is that this is a long-term commitment. This is not about rushing in on a white horse thinking you've got a solution. This is about long-term commitment, and really kind of sticking with it, because and I've learned this from Keith, that you can do more harm than good by coming in, doing something, jamming initiatives in someone's
Flash
face,
in the pan, yes, exactly.
And then disappearing again, having your logo and your picture taken and disappearing off. So you've got to think about it. It takes some resources, but the benefits that you will get out of it will be greater than you anticipated.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Andy. Andy Brown from Anglian Water and Keith Smith from the Ferry Project. Thank you so much for your time today.
Pleasure.
Wonderful to be here.
And thank you as well for listening to this episode of the Rural Homelessness Podcast. Don't forget that a new episode comes out twice a month, on the 1st and on the 15th. So I do look forward to having the pleasure of your company again really soon. Thank you and goodbye. Thank you for listening to the Rural Homelessness Podcast, brought to you by the Ferry Project. Visit our website on www.ferryproject.org.uk.